Here's how to tie the Prusik hitch knot. It's most commonly used in climbing to climb up a rope because as you pull it, it provides a lot of friction. But as you release it, you can freely move the knot upwards the rope. To tie this knot, you first need to get a Prusik loop, which is essentially a fixed loop which is created with a double fisherman's knot. Place the end of the loop in front of the rope and then take the other end and wrap it around the rope. Now continue wrapping it around another 2 or 3 times. Now take the end with the knot and pull it to one side. And finally, dress this knot so that in the end it looks exactly like this. It's important to do this part because it improves the overall friction. If you pull on it and it still slides, then you can wrap it around another time. The good thing about the Prusik loop is that you can load it in both directions and it still works just as fine. Its only downside is that it will not work with frozen or wet rope. In these instances, it's better to use a mechanical Prusik. To ascend a rope using Prusik loops, you need to get 2 loops, one on top and one at the bottom. You need to attach the top one to your climbing harness and you can place your feet through the bottom one. Essentially, you need to pull up the top Prusik loop, then the bottom one, then again the first one, and by doing this you can slowly and safely climb up a climbing rope. Here's how to tie the Clove hitch, which is one of the most useful knots to know in everyday situations. To tie it, take the end of the rope and go around the post on the right side, then go around it once again, but this time on the left side, and finally tuck the end of the rope underneath this strand over here and tighten it. But also make sure to dress the knot neatly together so that there's no slack when you pull on it. It isn't the most secure hitch, but it's pretty strong and you can tie it very easily. But what's even better, you can untie it very easily when you don't need it anymore. If you want to make it more secure, you can tie another half hitch around it here in the front. Instead of a half hitch, a lot of people like to do another Clove hitch on the top, but I found that the bottom Clove hitch usually tends to seize up pretty badly if you do that. So here's how to tie both versions of the slip knot, other called the slipped overhand knot. If used for knitting or creating a snare, then tie it using the first technique. Create a pretty large loop and then tie a simple overhand knot around the standing end. So the main idea behind it is that if you pull on the standing end, the loop will tighten itself and keep tight around the object. But if you want to create a quick release stopper knot, then use the second technique. Simply create a bight at the end of the rope and then with it tie a simple overhand knot. This will act as a stopper knot, so you can tie it after other knots to make them more secure. And if you want to untie it, simply pull on the end and the knot will come undone by itself very easily. Here's how to tie the rolling hitch. Take the end of the rope and go around the subject. Then cross the standing end and then do another full turn around it like this. Then go around the free end like this. And finally, tuck it underneath itself over here. And then tighten it before using it. In the end, it should look something like this. And it should be pulled in the direction opposite to the working end. If you pull it perpendicular to the object or in the other direction, then the knot isn't as strong. It's only meant to be pulled in this direction. It's usually used in construction for lifting up heavy tools, scaffolding pipes and timber. In this case, another half hitch is tied around the other end of the object so that when it's hanging perfectly vertical. Here's how to tie the 2 half hitches knot. Start by taking the end of the rope and going around the support. Then go around the standing end and through this loop formed over here and tighten the knot. And then proceed by tying another identical half hitch in the same direction and finally tighten it. It isn't the most secure knot, but it does work well with most types of non-slippery ropes. You can use it pretty much any time you need to attach a rope to a ring or a post. But if you want a stronger knot, then it can be improved in 2 ways. The first way is to do 1 additional turn around the post before tying the 2 half hitches. This makes it much stronger. And in this case, it's called the round turn and 2 half hitches knot. The other one is to just tie another half hitch after the second one. In this case, it's called the 3 half hitches knot. Here's how to tie the fisherman's bend knot. Start by placing both rope ends next to one another. Then tie a simple overhand knot around the first rope and tighten it. Now tie another overhand knot with the other rope facing in the other direction. And finally, pull each rope in the opposite directions until they slide together. The best part about this knot is that it is extremely easy to tie because everyone knows how to tie an overhand knot just from tying their shoes. It's also really secure. It won't come undone only if you pull it with extremely heavy loads or if the rope itself is very slippery. But with most types of ropes, this knot is more than reliable enough, even when being pulled with a good amount of force. Here's how to tie the adjustable grip hitch. Start by taking the end of the rope and going around the support. Then go around the standing end 2 times. 1, 2. Then do another turn, but this time around both strands. And finally, tug the end underneath the last turn. Before using it, tighten the knot by holding it with your one hand and then with your other hand pulling the end of the rope and then repeating the same process, only this time pulling this strand. So the main idea of this knot is that you can adjust the size of this loop pretty easily, but at the same time, if you pull on the rope over here, then it doesn't tighten by itself. This allows you to easily tension this rope. For example, you can use it when tensioning your tent guy lines and in other similar situations. It is very similar to the taut line hitch, which is pretty much as reliable and just as easy to tie. The main difference here is that if it's sitting against a large diameter support, it doesn't work as well as the taut line hitch. Here's how to tie the square knot. Start by placing both rope ends next to one another and then wrapping the second one around the first one. Now again, place both of them next to one another and wrap the right one around the left one, like this. Finish, pull both ropes while holding the rope ends, then release them and pull again. Make sure to leave the ends rather long because this knot tends to slip if pulled with a lot of force. For very simple applications, this knot is secure enough to connect to shorter ropes. If you want something more secure, you could do 2 turns around each rope instead of 1. But once tightened and put under load, it becomes pretty much a big mess that's very hard to untie. A much better solution would be to tie a figure-8 bend knot instead, which we covered in another video. Here's how to tie the taut line hitch. Start by wrapping the free end around the object. Then go around the standing end twice in the direction of the loop. Now take the end and cross over and do another turn in the same direction. And finally tug the end underneath itself like this. It's a very simple slide and grip knot that you can use anytime you need to tension the guy lines of your tent or your tarp, or if you need to make a close hanging line. If it still slides when you pull on it, you can do 3 turns or even 4 turns before finally finishing the knot. This will make it harder to slide, but it will have much more friction. And that's how a finished taut line hitch should look like. Here's how to tie the marlin spike hitch, which is used to create a temporary rope ladder. Start by making a bite in the rope and then rotating it downwards. Then place the top end of this rope behind it and push it through. Now pass the stick through this loop and tighten the knot. Here's how it should look like in the end when properly tightened. This knot is useful for 2 situations. The first one is if you need help with pulling the rope with a handle. In this situation, it's worth noting is that it only works if you pull it in one direction. In the other one, the knot capsizes. The other one is to create a quick rope ladder by creating a marlin spike hitch on each end of the stick. But use it only for temporary ladders because if you shake it, the sticks can come out. To learn other useful knots, subscribe to our channel.